Hello and welcome back to Anchor TV Interviews. My name is Tim Dean, Sports Manager for Anchor TV. This episode is going to be a little bit of a special one. This episode is being done in collaboration with Dr. R. Anthony Galvez's Tuesday TV production class, so thank you so much to them for helping out. And now for our guest today, he is a former member of Anchor TV, serving as the general manager for the organization in 2022. He was also the editor-in-chief for the Anchor newspaper that same year, spanning to 2023. Currently, he is a digital content producer for WRI 12. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Ray Baccari. Ray, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for taking the time to be here. I know it's your day off, so coming back to your alma mater, I'm sure must be a pretty solid feeling.
Always happy to, and especially for Anchor TV, where it was my home at one point.
Yes, sir. First off, can you tell us about how your interest in journalism began?
Yeah, absolutely. So it all started in high school I'll try to give a Spark Notes version because it's a bit of a long story. Toward the end, so like junior year, I had entered with my film classmates because I went to a performing arts charter school and film was one of the classes I was offered. We entered this documentary contest hosted by C-SPAN called Student Cam. During that contest, students who entered were given a prompt. That year's prompt, this was like 2018, was called "What Does It Mean to Be American?" So we were encouraged to use like a constitutional amendment, historical like event, or a national characteristic to answer it, and they encouraged us to interview elected officials and experts. And I had an interest in politics leading up to that. That was growing like ever since like the year prior. So I said, let's do this. And then we interviewed people running for mayor of Providence that year, the sitting House Speaker at the time. We had a senator, congressman, like a wide range of elected officials, and I was tasked with writing, editing, putting it together. And when I did that, I said, oh, I could turn this into something that I do for a career.
And you were in high school doing all this, so what was it like, talking to some elected officials, some mayoral candidates at such a young age?
A little intimidating at first because in a senator's case, there's only 100 of them in the country, where every state gets 2. So this is one of Rhode Island's only 2, Senator Sheldon Whitehouse. So the fact that he came and talked to us and I was able to conduct myself in a professional way was a very interesting experience that I'll always keep with me as I continue my professional journey.
Yeah, that's amazing. Now, let's go to your time at Anchor newspaper, where you started off as a staff writer, then becoming the news editor, and then becoming the editor-in-chief of the paper. Climbing up the positional ladder, how much did the workload increase throughout, and how were you able to manage that?
So the Anchor always has a special place in my heart. When I first got here, I was instantly thinking, okay, does this school have a newspaper? Does it have a TV station? And when I found out about the Anchor and Anchor TV, immediately joined as soon as I could. The workload definitely increased a lot. So being a staff writer, you're just writing the articles, send them to your editor, and then they kind of take care of the rest of it. At least from my time, I can't speak for how it is now, but news editor, then now you're editing that whole section. So then that was a little bit of a newer challenge because I had like 1 or 2 writers, and then also writing articles myself and chasing stories and trying to get content for the news section, which is the most important in my opinion for that publication. And then editor-in-chief, now you're overseeing the day-to-day operations, making sure that our print edition, which used to be weekly, then it ended up being once a month during COVID, and I believe it still is, making sure that is done, making sure that everybody's doing their job, managing different personalities. Honestly, there were some nights where I was up to like 3 a.m. A lot. So it was fun though. I look at it as this is part of the grind.
Mm-hmm. Do you have as many 3 a.m. nights right now as you have in the past, or?
A little bit less, but since I like what I do, sometimes I do a lot of networking or maybe interviews for my own YouTube channel, and some of those create late nights.
All right, going now to Anchor TV, being the news manager and then general manager, how is that being able to oversee and sort of connect the newspaper and TV together under your vision?
Absolutely. So it was at the same time too. When I was editor-in-chief at the Anchor, I was also general manager for Anchor TV because both of the people who were leading those organizations at the time were graduating. So there was a void, and I got encouraged to run for both. So we tried to do a lot of collaboration and multimedia storytelling. The big thing was the Anchor TV weekly newscast, which me and our general manager, when I had stepped down, Brian Brierly after me, helped kind of kickstart back up because we had it before, and then just again managing different personalities, looking at the day-to-day operations for both organizations, and hiring people, because when I was at Rick, it was during the COVID era, so I started like 2020, 2021, so things were shut down on campus. A lot of campus morale was down. A lot of people weren't actively participating in student organizations, so we had to aggressively recruit. And that was another challenge too, particularly for Anchor TV. The Anchor, there was always a lot of people that wanted to join, but Anchor TV, it was a little bit lower of interest among people that were here at the time. So recruitment was another big thing. And then in terms of collaboration, again, just multimedia storytelling, and then trying to find ways that if we wrote about an article or if we covered a student government meeting, how can we make both of these organizations tell the story?
I know Aiden Thompson in the TV studio right now, one of your, the guys you worked with, or
He was our assistant, I believe, our assistant sports editor at the time.
Oh, nice.
And yeah, him and I think it was Nicholas Heminger, who is our sports editor. Before the person before you. And yeah, it was. We covered a lot of good sports that year too, because the women's basketball team went on a very good run too. And there was the guy who was a wrestler on campus. He went pretty far in the D3. I believe it was a tournament or something like that.
Yeah.
It was a fun time.
All
It was a
right.
good year.
Yeah. Well, that concludes his work with Anchor TV and the newspaper. We'll talk more about Ray's time with student government as well as his current work right after these commercials produced by some of the TV production students. Be right back.
Josh, wake up.
What's this, honey?
I just had a dream that Josh being show was canceled. For
Oh,
good.
No, honey, the show is still on. Darling, the next episode is February 24th, 2026. It's a Tuesday instead of a Wednesday.
Oh. Okay.
Go back to bed. Go back to bed.
And we welcome back into Anchor TV interviews. Tim Mead once again here with Ray Baccari. In addition to writing and reporting on behalf of the media orgs, Ray was also a representative at large his senior year of college for student community government. Ray, tell us a little bit more about that and how it felt to be sort of on the opposite side of things compared to, journalism where you're talking to the guys and now I guess you're a student politician.
I guess it was bound to happen at some point because, as you know, I love politics, and writing for the Anchor and doing what I did for Anchor TV, one of the main beats I had was following what was going on in the student community government meetings. I feel like I maybe went to, in my time at Rick, the 3.5 years was like maybe all but like maybe 3 or 4, and they're like every other Wednesday at like 8 o'clock at the time too. So as I was making time out of my schedule to go there, and I enjoyed it because I would see what was going on. I was studying up what the process was like, Robert's Rule of Orders, what they do. And there were just some times where if I was filming it, especially when they had that whole situation with the operating agreement and the funding freeze for like multiple semesters, I had my own passionate stance on that, like off camera. So then when the time came, I had 1 semester left, I thought, you know what, why don't I just join? I know I'm not gonna be here for a while, but I obviously go to these meetings a lot and I care about what's going on in the campus community. So yeah, I decided to give it a shot and it was fun. And even then, I was still part of Anchor TV, so then I would kind of like help us set up the production at the time when they were still doing it in the student union. I think it was like 307 or one of the rooms, where I would be like, okay, here's the roster. We would get graphics set up. We tried to do it live. Yeah, that was also a fun experience because it played into the other interest I have, which is politics.
Yeah, no conflict of interest issues with any of the the guys there.
I don't think so. I mean, I didn't really like fully spearhead it. I just kind of gave a helping hand and was like, hey, we got the meeting, And then if I talked during the meeting, I solely try to represent the people that were here. So I tried to, if anybody signed my nomination papers, which I think it was 50 signatures, I would ask them what issues are you passionate about, and I would write it down, and then I would bring those up during a meeting, or if before a meeting someone was like, hey Ray, can you ask about this? I would be like, yeah. I remember we had a interesting conversation about it was like an energy drink ban at one point on campus. I could be muddying up the details, but it was a good time.
Mm-hmm. Before WPRI, you also worked as a freelance writer for Beacon Beat, Cranston Herald, Johnson Sunrise, and Warwick Beacon. Cranston Herald, shout out the Thunderbolts. When it came to writing difficulties, were there any difficulties in that, or did the Anchor newspaper sort of help ease that transition into writing for, what you could say, wider paper?
No difficulties that I could think of. Playing into my experience from the Anchor really helped. Actually, it was kind of funny how this came about. I'll give you the story. So the person who owns it now is Joy Fox. Before it was John Howell. So Joy Fox and John Howell have like a good working relationship, and when I had graduated, Rick, Joy Fox knew me from when she ran for Congress in the 2nd Congressional District in 2022. I had interviewed her for an article that's on the Anchor website and my podcast called Reality TV that I was doing very actively at the time. So she and I had like begun to know each other, and she was like, "Hey Ray, do you want to freelance for us? Get paid per article you write, give you some writing experience post college and before you get a job somewhere else." And I was like, "Sure, why not?" And no difficulties. The Anchor gave me a really good training ground for how to write an AP style and how to write for print, because writing for print and writing for TV are two completely different things. One's for the eye while the other's for the ear. And I even covered a really good breaking news story during my last week of editions, which I'll tell you about a little bit, which was there was a city councilwoman in Cranston at the time who resigned. This is like the 2024 election cycle, where it started off where I got a tip that the school committee member in that area was going to primary her, run against her in the Democratic primary. And then I was like, okay, I talked to the school committee member. She was like, yeah, I'm running, this is true. And then I talked to the councilwoman, and I'm like, okay, what are your thoughts that you have another Democrat running against you who's also pretty involved in Cranston politics? And then she was telling me that there's this, she was alleging that there was a conspiracy to get her out of that seat. And I was like, oh, really? And then next thing you know, after she has, what she tells me was a conversation with Cranston Democratic leadership, she ends up telling me she's going to resign. I was like, really? And this is like the third or fourth resignation in a few years in Cranston from the city council. And it turned into this breaking news story that like evolved for a couple weeks even after, because I wrote that and I was already going to WPRI, like I had already accepted the offer. And it was just fun, and I kind of was looking back at it saying, oh, I was having fun in print again, because it reminded me of the days at the Anchor where I would cover a student government meeting. I would constantly be talking to the SEG president or try to get a statement from Dr. Warner or President Sanchez for the first half. And yeah, it's just, I loved it. If I could ever do it again, I absolutely would.
That's fantastic. Sounds like you had just an awesome time, and it all built up to your current role with WPRI 12, where you are a digital content producer and assignment editor. What's that workflow like, and how have you enjoyed WPRI?
I loved it. These past 2 years have been amazing. I started there, I think it was April 2024 to be exact, so next month will be my 2-year anniversary with the station. So I do a bit of a hybrid role. The digital content producer side is mainly writing for the website and creating video content that goes with our articles. Sometimes that's in the form of these like 30-second to 1-minute videos called 12 News Nows, where we do a straight hit where we look at a camera and just report whatever we're writing about in one take, and it goes right embedded within the article. And then the other side is the assignment editor position, which basically I help bridge the gap in communication between our field crews, the reporters out there in the newsroom, and also monitor for breaking news. So things like, seeing if there's something going on Twitter that somebody's tweeting about, like maybe a bad crash in Providence, or like listening out to our police and fire scanners, where if we hear a fire, then we now have to have somebody talk to those reporters and tell them where the fire is, what we know so far. And then while they're on their way, we're then reaching out to police departments, fire departments, maybe talking to dispatchers, trying to get any bit of information to report it as quickly and accurately as possible.
And you already answered that a little bit, with this upcoming question. How are you able to, find out and investigate a story, and what makes a story? This is the sort of more an elaboration thing. What makes a story worth investigating into?
It really depends. In this case, the station covers all of Rhode Island and Bristol County, Mass. So when you think about a story, you have to think about what are the statewide implications of it. What is the audience for this? One thing I learned both during an internship I did at other news station and even during my time at RIC was when you are looking into a story, why does it matter? We can think about, if you talk about the state budget, every tax dollar we spend goes into that budget, so that's why that's important. Or we had the big blizzard that happened, the historic blizzard of 2026. Now there's a lot of potholes in the road, so why is that important? Well, people have to drive over them every day. If you have an elected official, like in that case of the Cranston story I was telling you, that was an elected official resigning. Now we have to find out why they're resigning. Although I didn't cover that for WPRI, just to give you an example. I can even think of another one where it evolved over time, where we had this school committee candidate in North Smithfield who tweeted something out in relation to the son of then vice presidential candidate Tim Walz, and he got a lot of fire for that tweet because it was an offensive tweet. And then at the same time I was like, okay, I can cover this because I like politics, and this was a big story within the political circle. But then one of our senior reporters was like, well, what are the statewide implications? And then right around that time, he resigned from a statewide Young Republican group because the candidate was a Republican. So then now there's that statewide tie. You have to think about just how, and also why it matters too. That's the other thing. I learned this during my time at the Anchor when I would cover the student government meetings, and I take this principle with me. Our mentor at the time, the man, the myth, the legend himself, Jim Hummel of the Hummel Report. Anytime I would write about something and it wasn't clear what happened, he would say, Ray, don't tell me that the meeting happened. Tell me what happened in the meeting. So yeah, just a combination of those things.
Yeah, just to follow up a little bit, Jim Hummel, a previous professional advisor for the Anchor. How much have you stayed connected with him after graduation? I know you've been on his show a couple of times. I've been on it once for a scholarship, for my PBS scholarship, but you've been on it a bajillion more times than me.
Yeah, so a little bit of, I don't know how much you know this, I'll answer your question in a second, you might have to re-ask it, but when I saw that and that you were going to Rick, I was like, oh, he's going to be the sports guy, so I immediately sent an email to I think it was Kelsey and Liv at the time running the Anchor. I was like, hire this guy, or I might have texted Hummel, I forget. But to now answer your question, yes, I still am in communication with Hummel. I was actually texting him the other day. Yeah, and even being on Lively, I was on there a few times after graduation. Lively Experiment on Rhode Island PBS, or now Ocean State Media, I should say. Yeah, I'm still in communication with him. I look at him as not only a mentor, but a great friend.
Thanks for throwing me that bone back before my freshman year. We'll take another quick commercial break. When we come back, some closing questions for Ray. Stay tuned.
All you need is seltzer.
And we welcome you back into Anchor TV interviews. Tim Ian back here with Ray Baccari. Ray, you are heavily invested in local politics, as you mentioned before, and news in general. Why should people, especially college students, keep up with local news and local journalism?
I feel like during my whole time at Rick, I was always trying to convince my fellow college students why they should care about local politics and the importance of it. So this is an amazing question. Just because it affects our day-to-day life. Every time you buy an item, you pay a sales tax. In Rhode Island, it's 7%. So you should care about that tax rate. If you have an apartment, your rents are going up likely because the housing market's not the greatest in our state. Another reason, if you live in a city, Providence, city services are a crucial function of local government. How quickly the trash gets picked up on time. Will that pothole get filled? With the blizzard, how quickly is that snow getting plowed? Just mainly because it affects our day-to-day lives. And it's easy to say like, oh, who cares about stuff like on the presidential level, but the local politics really matters so much. There are thousands of bills that get introduced every legislative session, and a lot of them either go under the radar or are very important pieces of legislation. The last legislative session, they passed a version of an assault weapons ban. That got a lot of coverage, and that's a hot button issue around the country. And just staying involved too, so especially, again, I'm not trying to repeat myself, but when you have something like, that bad blizzard, you need to know who your council person is to call and be like, Councilman, our street is still not plowed. Or if you have a complaint that you want to have someone represent you on at the state level, you have a state rep and a state senator for that reason. It's just very important.
What makes a news story like a good one, a compelling one, in your opinion? Maybe going a little bit more on the philosophical level, maybe.
For print or for TV, because they're two different animals.
We'll do both. We have time for both.
Okay, so for print, it depends on what your word count limitations are, because I can have an article where I interview one person and that could go like 1,000 words if I really want to get in depth. It varies on the story. We have a lot of examples where I cover politics, so I'm always thinking, okay, again, what are the statewide implications? Why does this matter to the average person who may not know politics as much as like me or the other political reporters in Rhode Island that follow this day to day? Just why it matters is the big thing. If someone is watching your 2-minute story or your news package, how are you going to keep them invested in that 2 minutes? And when they do watch it, they need to take away the who, what, where, when, or what the headline was. Like, what exactly was it? In the newsroom, a lot of times if we pitch something and say we're rambling and continuing to add more details, they'll say, stop, what's the headline? That's really the big thing. Like, why is this important? and what happened.
Yeah.
That's the main thing. And then if it's breaking news, I mean, that's another thing. I've been in the newsroom for some breaking news. So the Gabriel House fire in Fall River, for example, I was there that weekend night, and I heard the original fire scanner traffic. And we were like, oh, this is a big deal, because they were talking about people hanging from windows, like in the scanner traffic. And that ended up being like multiple people passed away from that fire, and this was at an elderly person home. Like that was a big deal, and there was like a lot of follow-up stories into, the process of vetting that building, and was it up to code? That's an example. I think that's, if that answers your question.
Mm-hmm. Following up, what do you do find a breaking news story in the newsroom? What's that sort of like on that first reaction? Is it sort of like a little chaotic thing, like, oh my god, this is really happening right now, or is it just like a,
yeah, it's like the
try to stay
SpongeBob
calm?
meme where everybody's like running around with fire. No, I'm just kidding. That's a joke. But no, I mean, there's a lot of times where tension is up because we're trying to make sure we not only get that information but get it accurate too. Because if it's something like, I can't speak to the mass shootings because I wasn't in the newsroom when those broke, but I was there for the days that followed. There was a lot of phone calls that had to be made, and a lot of sourcing and getting information and having crews from the field, and we were wall to wall live for hours. And then, news stories I've, been there for when they broke, like the Gabriel House fire. My job, I was reaching out to the fire department, trying to see if we can get information, communicating with our reporter and photographer there to find out what officials are talking about at the scene yet. If it's, something like, I'm trying to think of an example. For a political one, it's kind of a little bit different, because the only time where it'll get like that is if it's like the Washington Bridge shut down, for example, or like an election night. Election nights are so fun in the newsroom. It's like Christmas for me. But yeah, it's just, everybody's trying to get the information, and we're actively communicating. Sometimes you're shouting across the newsroom. There are other times where it's like, okay, you reach out to the police department's public information officer. You're going to the scene. Here's what we have so far. Try to see if there's anybody that's talking about how they knew the victim or anything like that, and if we could try to get them on camera. There's a lot of moving parts.
One more thing before we head on to the final question. Whenever those national stories break out, where it's super big, like of course the shooting and Brown and the shooting at lunch. Are you guys in conversations with the sort of the national media outlets? If they need information.
Yeah, so they'll communicate with us because our station's owned by Nexstar. So we'll have folks from there reach out. We have a lot of sister stations, and then we're in collaboration. I don't know if it's still the case with News Nation, which is a news outlet nationally. So yeah, there's a little bit of collaboration. Sometimes we'll send them our video, or they'll pull directly feed from our cameras. It's actually really helpful too, and it's when you see how it's done, it's really cool.
All right, last question of the day, the most important question I have. If you had to compare your work ethic and mentality to a Boston Celtics player, be current or all time, who would that player be? I hope to God it's not Jason Tatum.
Oh, obviously the White Mamba, Brian Scalabrine. I'm just kidding. Marcus Smart. His work ethic was amazing on that team. Really good defender. Oh man, I wish he was there when they got the ring. That would have been, he deserved a ring in my opinion. Especially during that Warriors series in the finals where they're up 2-0. That one's still painful. Marcus Smart would definitely be the one, just because of the work ethic. And he had a very sad story too. And I look at stuff like that went on with my family when I was younger too. So definitely Marcus Smart, I would say.
Fantastic answer. I'm glad you didn't say the answer I didn't want you to say. That's all the questions we have for today, folks. Thank you so much to Dr. Galvez's Tuesday TV production class once again for their help today. It truly is appreciated. Once again, Ray Baccari, digital content producer and assignment editor for WPRI 12. This has been Tim Bean for Anchor TV Interviews. Have an awesome day, everyone, and take care.